Hey, badass black girls, and they making big moves. Hey, badass black girls, nothing that you can't do. They are the future, I'm trying to tell ya. They want the best, no time to settle. They got the strength to handle the pressure. These are the queens, nobody better. Yeah, changing the narrative, that is imperative. They about to rock this. Tell the women that you got this. Got no time for people who are toxic. It's all love, good vibes. You know I got your back, girl. Talking issues that matter. This is badass black girl, yeah.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to a new episode of Badass Black Girl. This is your friend MJ, and today we have another wonderful guest. Here is Jordana Hemingway. Hi, Jordana.
MJ.
Would you please introduce yourself for those who don't know you?
Sure. My name is Jordana Hemingway. I am a producer at The Daily Show with Trevor Noah. And I'm just, super stoked and excited to just be sharing this platform with you all. And I think what you guys are doing is great.
Thank you so much for taking the time and meeting with us. I was so excited to meet you. There are shows that we love, but how often do we think about the people behind the scenes making it all happen? And here you are making things happen for so many people. And I'm really excited that you agreed to come and talk to us a little bit about how you became you. So,
Yeah.
tell me, Jordana, how did you become Jordana?
Wow. Well, you're giving me way too much credit here. So it was definitely a little bit of a much more not glamorizing process. So a little background on myself is my went to Brooklyn College. So I, went to private school all my life and a small Catholic school, like most Haitian immigrants. I was born in Haiti. So my mom just wanted me kind of like sheltered in a sense. So going to Brooklyn College was very close to home. And I was a television radio major. I knew I wanted to be in media in some aspect. I knew I wanted to be behind the scenes from very early on. My father was is a photographer. He used to work for the Haiti Observatory, which is a big Haitian newspaper. So I remember him, bringing me to the factory, and I would just sit on top of papers, and he always had a camera in his hand, and I thought that was really cool. And then growing up in the 90s, my mom used to love talk shows, and she used to have talk shows on all the time. So I remember the era of like Sally, Jesse Raphael, Montel, Ricky Lake. And I always thought it was fascinating to me, how do they get these people to tell their stories? And they're all different. What does that job entail? My mom was not too happy about my career decision when I went to Brooklyn College. She was like, "You want to major in what? Like, you don't want to be a doctor, a nurse, or a lawyer or engineer?" And I'm just like, no, I want to be in television. So I stuck with it, and I graduated. It took me a while to actually kind of get in the door. I did a couple of internships while I was in college. I interned at a court show. It's definitely canceled by now. It's definitely canceled. And I just made sure that I always showed up for the job. I made sure that I always worked hard, no matter what. That was back then when you didn't really get paid for internships. And once I graduated, I kind of circled back with the production manager and say, "Hey, listen, I just really want a job. I need opportunity. I need a shot." And that's when I landed at the Steve Wilco show, and it was more off of a shoot off of like Jerry Springer. It was Steve. He was Jerry Springer's bodyguard. Got his opportunity to have his own show, and my job was, booking those guests and producing them and telling them like, okay, this is the best way to share your story. Making sure that um, they told it in a truthful way. And I think working in conflict talk definitely gets a bad rap, because people are like, "Oh, what is that?" Like, but there's a reason why some of these shows have been on the air for, 15, 20 years. You think about Jerry Springer was on the air for, I believe, like 25, and I think it kind of keeps its fingers on the pulse of like what regular everyday Americans are dealing with. And Jerry Springer had made a good quote, like, your average politician could be on the Jerry Springer show, So with Steve, it was kind of similar. I would book everything from like DNAs to cheating, just like that type of TV. And I was there, I worked my way up from like a freelance PA, and then worked my way up to coordinating producer. And I was proud of the work I was doing at one point, but then it just got to be, I just like I wasn't growing in a sense. So I left. I left with no plan. I left with no backup job. I just like, you know what, there has to be something more. And I was scared, but I was like, I'll just wing it. My husband was super supportive. He was just like, if anybody's gonna land on their feet, it's you. And that's when I went to Austin, Texas, and I worked at this other show called 600 Pound Life. And that was very similar, looking for those real stories, finding these great dynamic guests that could tell their stories in a compelling way. So that was my job. And I stayed there for a bit. And but I'm married, so I went to come back to home base. That was very important to me. And I interviewed for a bit, but I realized in television it's all about who you know and making those connections. So I never necessarily I was getting experience as I was moving on and moving along. I was just like, okay, let me keep updating my resume, little projects here. Um, but then when I got to the Tamron Hall show, that was just like drinking out of a fire hose, right? Because it was nothing like I've ever did before. It was, a little bit lifestyle, a little bit celebrity. It was very fast paced. Tamron is a dynamic journalist, so we had to, make sure that we were booking just really good stories. So and my experience, I always would tell like my husband and my father, like the experience that I had at every stage kind of prepared me for what I'm doing now. So I was able to book those really complicated stories because I had dealt with all these type of stories at Wilco's, you know what I mean? And so when I got to Tamron Hall, it wasn't that it was necessarily easy. Like it was easy for me to book the guests, but everything else was learning curve. It's like, okay, wait, what is this? Who is that? How do I gather elements? How do I process all this paperwork? So that was the learning curve for me. And then from Tamron, like I had interviewed for the Daily Show, and just talking about who you know and how you meet people is I love a good informational. I love to connect with women, dope Black women especially, but just women overall. I don't care. I just feel like if because us as women, we have so many um, barriers ahead, and we just have so many blocks and road bumps, and it's just super daunting. And then to compound that, especially when you're a Black woman. So I met a woman at a networking event because I do think even if you're not looking for a job, definitely network, definitely connect and collaborate with, a MJ, for instance. You never know. And this was around the first debate of the 2016 election, and she was just like, how do you know all of these people? Like, how do you, why do you follow all this stuff? And I was just like, well, because you kind of need to know what's going on in the world. And she was just like, yeah, but you know a lot. You really would be great with my friend. She works at the Daily Show. And I'm like, girl, bye. Like the Daily Show with Trevor Noah, like I'm not even that breed. I'm not that caliber. And you automatically just push things aside when you think it's not achievable. So I just kept on, she did connect me. I did have an informational with the executive producer who was awesome. And it just didn't work out. Like to be honest, I didn't have that much experience at that time. And it was great to have that connection. I did a couple of more interviews with them. It was just more like, we just don't have the right fit right now. And I'm like, okay, because they weren't even looking for any position. I just went there off of like, hey, I want a connection. I want to meet and just learn and have, So I was like, okay, damn, right? But then I got the job at Tamron Hall, and Tamron was great. It was stressful, but it was still great because it was like, okay, we're producing. That was part of something. Launching that show, that was amazing as well. But then I still always had like the Daily Show in the back of my mind, right? Like I'm like, okay, well, what's next? Because I do think that at my first job, I stayed a little comfortable and I stayed a little there for a little too long. So I've always just like, okay. And then I got to produce Steve Harvey. Got connected. It's all about connections. Like, oh, let me introduce you to Jordana. She's great. And I got a producer role. I produced Steve Harvey, and he was fantastic too for his show on Facebook Watch. And that one was different as well because it was, we're booking great human interest stories. You got to think about it. This is like in the wake this is during like the height of the pandemic too, you know, and when the whole world didn't know what was happening, let alone creatives and producers, we didn't know how to create new content during a pandemic. We just had to figure it out and wing it, right? So, so from there, I was really happy, and I just always circled back. I would always just check in with the EP at the Daily Show and say, "Hey, girl, hey, we're still here," you know. And then finally, she was like, "Yeah, let's hop on a Zoom." So I did a couple more rounds of interviews, and then I landed at the Daily Show. And so far, it's been great. But like, I'm making this full disclaimer. I am still relatively new at the Daily Show. I haven't been there for years. This has been relatively new, but my first piece, the one thing I am proud of is the fact that the staff is very open-minded, and we kind of tell stories that I feel to me are very important. So for instance, my first piece that I pitched just aired not too long ago, and it was about the Divine Nine and what does that mean for, you know, them seeing Kamala Harris as vice president. And I remember one of the writers was like, are you D9? Are you a Greek? And I'm like, no, I just know that I have friends who are AKAs, and I know that they are packing up their pink and green merch. And I think that's a very important story to tell. And I don't think that at other shows I might have been given that, like, oh yeah, girl, this is a green light, thumbs up, we're good to go, you know? So I think that's why I'm very happy and proud to actually work with this awesome group of people. So that's my little like spiel.
I love it. And there are so many things we can learn from your experience. First, I heard hard work.
Yeah,
You did not get where you are just by, waiting for things to happen. You had
yeah,
to
no.
work for everything. You had to show perseverance. And I love the fact that sometimes you just have to ask for what you want. All it took was for you to tell someone, hey, this is what I want from you. Can you introduce me to so and so? And this idea of asking came up often in you relating how you became a producer at the Daily Show. And I think it's really important for people to remember that it's not just about being great and knowing that you're great, it's also about that networking, letting people know. I'm looking for this. If you
Yeah.
happen to have the necessary connections, think about me, and
Hmm.
making sure that the message is communicated properly. That's fantastic to know.
Yeah, and I think with networking too, it's just not, you don't want to come across like, okay, here's the job I want, now do the work, you know? So even with my connections, I would always make sure to follow up on emails. I would always make sure that like I gave them everything they needed wrapped up in a bow. And because we don't really necessarily have to do you any favors. The world, and that's one thing my dad would tell me, like, the world does not owe you anything. You kind of have to be prepared for that. So even when I was asking for recommendations or connections, I would always preface it like, hey, please, if you can, and just see whatever they need, follow up, and email or, call. And now with coronavirus, I feel like before I was doing informationals, like literally taking out people to lunch and coffee. Can I sit down with you? Now it's nothing for somebody just to hop on a quick Zoom, right? And say, hey, can I have 15 minutes of your time just to pick your brain?
So a lot of people who watch Badass Black Girl, they're relatively young, trying to figure out what they want to do with their lives, just thinking about options. We talked about some of the traits that you had to have to succeed. What are some others that maybe we did not mention? What do you feel you needed in order for you to advance in your career?
I always, I never necessarily cared about what people thought about me, right? I always just wanted to make sure that like if you were gonna say something about me, you weren't gonna say that I was lazy. That was my biggest thing. You weren't gonna say like, oh yeah, she's like horrible at her job, she's just really lazy, she doesn't do anything. I never want that to be around. So I think at the core of everything is just passion and hard work. And I know that sounds cheesy and cliche, and it's like, oh, you make it seem so easy. No, that's what it really boils down to, because especially in television, it's really about, you not burning any bridges, you not doing anything half-ass. I mean, so I would always make sure that no matter what, I did everything to my best ability. That way, if you did have another project, can you put me on? And it's just like, oh yeah, because that's how it works. I mean, for a while, and I was unemployed for a bit, and it does question you, it does test you, it does make you feel like, hey, am I not good enough? And I realized that in television, that's just kind of the game a little bit. It's just how it is. But once you kind of get your Rolodex bigger and popping, right, you get people that just reach out to you for jobs. So I do think, for me, I think the root of it is all about hard work ethic and just passion. That's the one thing I will say.
What are some of the most exciting people you got to meet?
Um, So I like Gabrielle Union for sure. I remember one of my, like, I was actually just talking about this yesterday with my friend, because I don't know if you guys remember, but a year this today is what, March 15th. So last year around March 11th, there was that viral video of this little Black girl saying "I'm ugly" when somebody was combing her hair.
Yes.
So I found that story. We immediately booked it. I'm like, we need to get her on the show. But we were, at that time, I was working at Tamron Hall, and we knew we had Angela Bassett. And if you remember, Angela Bassett is known to have like these great speeches. I remember there was that one speech she gave at Black Girls Rock, and it was just like, "You are beautiful." Like, just imagine everything you want to hear about Black women, right? And that, take us to church. And I was like, wouldn't it be dope, if Angela Bassett kind of spoke some power into this girl and kind of just had this moment. And we would, myself and my co-producer, we were just talking about it, and she was just like, yeah, that would be dope, like, let's try to make that happen. So we reached out to Angela Bassett's team, and she was like, absolutely, I'm here for this. And then we kind of just coordinated everything. And then we got Matthew Sherry, the author of Hair Love, to like send over a couple of books and swag and all this stuff. And it was just getting her on stage, surprising her, and her mom and the babysitter freaking out, eh, with Angela Bassett, of course. So that to me was one of my favorite segments, because it was just something that I had saw in the middle of the night, just like on, the Shade Room of Baller Alert, right? Like how we all do. And just like, this video just was so gut wrenching. And it was like, okay, well, how can I, like, uh, make this girl feel a little bit better? And I remember in the green room after, we took a picture, and my hair was out, and it's like, bro, I had a really good hair day that day. And I remember us taking a picture, and I think for her, even though she's young and she probably doesn't understand, probably won't understand, so she's older, but I think it matters for a young Black girl to see someone like in that position that kind of looks like her. So that was a really great piece. And and everybody's like, well, what kind of stories do you tend to pitch? And I pitch things that impact me and things that I'm passionate about, and my friends would actually watch. My friends, my girlfriends, are always the one I'm like, girl, let me run this by you real quick, or and anything that they're talking about, anything that we're kikiing in the DMs, or we're in our group chat talking about, that's the stuff that I try to pitch, because it's like, if my friends are talking about it, best believe other Black women are talking about it, right? So and fast forward, when I was producing at Steve Harvey, same thing. There was this young Black girl who went viral. This was around like the summertime, and she was just like loving her hair pattern. She was like, oh, my curls are so cute. And I was just like, wow. To me, as a girl, I grew up wanting to perm my hair, right? I mean, I've been natural lately, but there's a whole new generation of Black girls that don't even know what perm is, right? And I thought that was great. So I brought her on, and I surprised her with Gabrielle Union. I like those kind of stories, because when you see it, if you're a girl, a young girl, and you see a celebrity and they're telling you, hey, you are beautiful, hey, you're okay, ain't nobody gonna tell you anything different, right? So I always try to stick with stories like that. And then I do more serious stories too. Like I had a piece on the Tamron Hall show. I don't know if you guys remember these viral videos of like these black students getting into like these great schools like Harvard and Yale, and they would like go viral, and they would like the whole class would watch and they would scream.
I,
And yeah, and this school was actually the New York Times did a piece on them about, you know, how the school was actually like a fraud, right? The school was actually not preparing these kids. The school was beefing up the grades, and then they would get to these schools, they would get to the Yale, they would get to the Harvards and really struggle. So, you know, I did serious, sad stuff like that too. But anything that I'm passionate about, I always try to say like to myself, you know, how can we tell this story? Or, you know, if it's just something that's on Twitter, how can we discuss this if it's a topic, you know? So that's to me like the, not necessarily like not everything has to be celebrity based, but because I don't, not that I don't care about celebrities, we all, you know, but it's just for me, it's like the real human stories, and the those are the ones that I always treasure. And if a celebrity happens to be a part of it, great, but it has to make sense.
I usually have a question about self care. You mentioned earlier how Black women don't have it easy. We have to wear so many hats, and things are not just given to us on a platter. So I'm always curious about how successful people take care of themselves so that um, they still get
Yeah.
the energy to wake up in the morning and do amazing things. So, how do you
Yeah.
practice self care?
Well, it's so weird because I do think I'm coming to a part of this point of my life where I feel like I have to give myself some grace this year, right? Because we were in a pandemic. This is unprecedented times, as they like to say. So I can't worry about working out all the time, right? Because that's what you're supposed to do. You're supposed to work out. But I do like to work out, but not right now. Not right now so much. But on a good day, if I'm really stressed out, I do tend to go for a run in the morning, if I'm able to. And you know, running was definitely. I think running or working out in any aspect. If you ask any successful person, they'll always tell you they wake up at the butt crack of dawn, and they work out, and they start their day. And I do feel like I was even more efficient when I was doing that. I was actually I trained for the marathon in 2018, and I had, you know, completed it. And those months of me training, I was just so diligent because I was like, I don't have time to mess around, you know.
That's
So that's like
amazing.
that's like the hardcore stuff. But other self care is just really on a Sunday. Um, Waking up, going to Trader Joe's, waking up, going to Trader Joe's, coming home, meal prepping, and listening to music, and saging my house and giving myself a good facial. I'm very bare bones. I like you know, and like getting my favorite snacks from Trader Joe's and sending them all out on the Sunday morning on my little thing, and listening to music or watching a good show. I do dabble in the reality TV world. I like just to watch stuff that I don't have to think about. Because my husband works in news, so the television's always on CNN or Fox or all this stuff. So it's nice just to unplug a little bit. But yeah, and I think for me, that's my self care, just like really trying to take times to enjoy whatever that is. So if that means if I want to sit on my couch and be on my phone and just keep scrolling for no reason, that's what I want to do because I work so hard during the week that sometimes I just don't want to think about anything. You know what I mean? And if that means that Sunday I might want to go for a run, I might want to, you know, go to a gym class, okay, but I don't necessarily like have a structure. Okay, this is my thing, you know. But I do definitely try to make sure I at least well, I can tell you one thing that I have done for the past year. Every day, before I check my phone, before I check Twitter, Instagram, my email, anything, I say my affirmations. I say five things that I have. I say five things that I, you know, have, and three things from the day before that I'm grateful for. So it gives me pause to reflect on like what happened yesterday, before you just start go, 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 go. So I always say my five affirmations and then three things that I have I'm grateful for from the day before. So tomorrow, for instance, I'm like, you know what? I was really grateful for that conversation with MJ. It was great. And just reflect on that. That I do every single day.
Jordana, you're amazing. Thank you so much for taking the time to talk to us,
Of
sharing your
course.
journey and some tips for us to follow in your footsteps. So, uh,
Not in my footsteps. I don't know. I think everybody has to create their own path. But yes, thank you so much, MJ.
that's true. A little bit of both, right?
Yes,
Um,
yes, yes.
Using you as a role model and then forging a new path. Let's
Perfect.
say it.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for your time, and we hope that you'll come back to visit
Yes.
us at Badass Black Girl. Flying solo today, but next time when you come, some other team members will be here and
Oh my God.
have more
Okay.
fun.
Perfect, perfect, perfect.
See you soon.
Thank you. Bye.